People laughed when a ragged, homeless black woman stood at the edge of the airfield, staring at a sleek private jet like it was her destiny. The millionaire owner mocked her, sneering, "I'll give you the plane if you fly it." Everyone watching expected her to shrink away, but instead she walked closer, her posture steady, her eyes unshaken. No one knew she had once been celebrated as one of the greatest aviators alive, a pioneer who had broken barriers in the sky before life tore everything away. What happened next would silence the entire crowd and rewrite her story forever. What happened on that runway will leave you speechless. Watch until the end to see how this homeless woman stunned the millionaire, the crowd, and changed aviation history forever. Years before that fateful day on the airfield, she was not the woman people mocked. She had been a trailblazer, a young black girl who fell in love with the sky when most people like her were told they'd never leave the ground. Growing up in a small town, she would sit for hours on the grass, watching planes streak across the horizon, dreaming of the day she could take flight. She worked endless hours, taking odd jobs, saving every penny, fighting against a system that told her aviation was not for people like her. Through sheer determination, she earned her license, became one of the first black women to fly solo across the country, and even trained others who dreamed of soaring. But life is not always kind to pioneers. A devastating accident grounded her career, medical bills drained her savings, and a series of personal tragedies pushed her into poverty. Soon, the world that once celebrated her seemed to forget she had ever existed. By the time the millionaire's plane appeared at that small airfield, she had been living on the streets for years, carrying her story like a hidden treasure no one bothered to ask about. To the crowd, she was just another homeless woman loitering near expensive property. To him, she was an easy target for ridicule. Yet in her heart, the sky still called to her. That day was not random. Something deep inside told her she had to be there. The sound of the engine, the smell of jet fuel, the sight of that gleaming aircraft brought back memories she had buried. What no one knew was that this encounter would reignite the fire she thought was gone forever, and remind the world who she truly was. The crowd had gathered for a private aviation event, where wealthy pilots and enthusiasts flaunted their luxury aircraft. The millionaire, a man known for his arrogance, had flown in on his gleaming jet to show off its speed and power. He noticed her standing near the chain-link fence, clothes dusty from the road, hair unkempt, eyes fixed on the plane like it belonged to her. The smirk on his face grew wider with every step he took toward her. He tossed out his mocking challenge loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'll give you the plane if you fly it." The crowd laughed, amused by the humiliation they expected to follow. But instead of shrinking away, she stood tall. Something inside her snapped, not in anger but in resolve. For years she had carried her past silently, too tired to explain to strangers who she once was. But at that moment she felt a surge of courage. She walked past the fence and asked to step onto the tarmac. Security hesitated, but the millionaire, still laughing, waved her through. The crowd followed, eager to see what would happen next. She approached the jet with reverence, running her hand along its fuselage. Memories flooded back, early mornings in training, late nights studying flight manuals, the thrill of her first solo takeoff. The smell of fuel and metal felt like home. The millionaire continued to taunt her, certain she would fail or freeze. Then came the moment that shifted everything. She climbed into the cockpit. Her hands moved with precision, muscle memory guiding her every motion. She ran a quick pre-flight check with the ease of someone who had done it hundreds of times before. The crowd's laughter turned to murmurs. The millionaire's smirk faltered. With permission from the event coordinators, who were now intrigued, the engines roared to life. She taxied the jet to the runway, her face calm and focused. The crowd, once mocking, now stood silent. Phones raised to capture what they were sure would be a disaster or a miracle. When the jet lifted off the ground with flawless control, gasps erupted from every corner of the field. She climbed gracefully, banking the plane with the kind of precision that only a seasoned aviator could achieve. As the aircraft soared above them, the millionaire's expression changed from mockery to awe. This was no lucky guess, no reckless stunt. This was mastery. Each maneuver she executed was a message, a statement that she had not been broken by life's hardships. By the time she landed, the crowd had erupted into cheers. What started as an attempt to humiliate her had become a moment that would put her back on the map. But the story was far from over. What came next would not just humble the millionaire, it would change her life forever. When the plane rolled to a stop, she emerged from the cockpit to a stunned silence that quickly turned into roaring applause. The same people who had laughed minutes earlier now rushed forward, eager to shake her hand, to take photos, to ask who she was. The millionaire stood frozen, his earlier arrogance replaced by an expression of shock and embarrassment. He had meant to humiliate her in front of everyone, but instead he had revealed a legend. Someone in the crowd, a journalist covering the event, recognized her. Within seconds, her name was spoken aloud, and a ripple of recognition passed through the spectators. She was not just any pilot. She was the aviation pioneer who had once made headlines for shattering barriers in a world dominated by men. Articles had been written about her achievements, documentaries had featured her story, and yet she had vanished from the public eye. Now, here she was, standing on the runway in worn shoes and a tattered coat, reminding the world that greatness cannot be erased by hardship. The millionaire stepped forward, his pride visibly wounded. For a moment, he tried to save face with a nervous laugh, but the weight of what had just happened was too much to ignore. He offered her his hand, not out of pity but respect. For the first time that day, she smiled, not a bitter smile, but one of quiet triumph. Then came the most powerful moment. The journalist live-streamed her story to thousands watching online. Within minutes, the clip went viral. Her name began trending, and offers of support poured in from aviation groups, sponsors, and even former students she had trained. This was no longer just about proving she could fly. It was about reclaiming her place in history. What was supposed to be a cruel joke had turned into her grand return to the sky. In the days that followed, her life changed almost overnight. News outlets across the country picked up the story of the homeless woman who flew the millionaire's jet. But instead of just framing it as a shocking viral moment, they dug deeper. Reporters uncovered her history, her groundbreaking flights, her mentorship of young aviators, and the personal tragedies that had driven her into obscurity. People were stunned that someone who had given so much to aviation had been left forgotten on the streets. Donations began pouring in from strangers who wanted to help her get back on her feet. Aviation organizations rallied around her, offering speaking opportunities, sponsorships, and resources to restore her pilot credentials. Within weeks, she had housing, a steady income, and a renewed purpose. As for the millionaire, he could have walked away in humiliation. But instead, he did something unexpected. He publicly apologized, not just to her, but to everyone who had ever been judged by their appearance. He even created a scholarship fund in her name to support underrepresented students in aviation. What had begun as mockery had turned into a movement, inspiring thousands to rethink how they viewed people they might otherwise dismiss. On the anniversary of that day, she was invited to speak at a major aviation expo. Standing in front of a packed audience, she shared her story. Not as a tale of tragedy, but as a testament to resilience. Her final words left the room in silence. You may lose everything, your job, your home, your title, but you can never lose who you truly are. And who I am is a pilot. Her story became a reminder that greatness doesn't disappear just because life knocks you down. Sometimes all it takes is one moment to rise again, and one witness to see you for who you really are. So tell me, if you saw someone on the street today, would you look past them, or would you wonder what story might be waiting to take flight?